Welcome to Moonbeaming, a podcast about lunar living, magic, creativity, tarot, and more. I'm your host, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener, and I'm so honored and excited to be here with you today. Hello, and welcome back to Moonbeaming, a podcast where we discuss love, magic, and reality. I'm your host, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener, and I am thrilled about this particular episode. And I am thrilled that you are here. I'm so thrilled that I'm having myself a 0 alcohol beer, which I've really been getting into this year. I stopped drinking last year, and oddly, I never drank beer when I drank alcohol, but I'm really into these hoppy refreshers. They're just really hitting the spot. So, crack open a cold one, whether that be a La Croix, a hoppy refresher, or some other stuff that makes you feel okay, and enjoy. Before we get right into the topic, I've got a reminder for everyone, and that is, did you know there is a Patreon you can join to support this here podcast, where you can get dozens of tarot spreads, half a dozen secret episodes, and more? It is true. By supporting the show, you get the wonderful satisfaction of knowing that Moonbeaming shall continue. And you also get additional free content every month, whether the show is running or not. You can support us over at patreon.com/The Moon Studio. And we will also put that link in the show notes. The other reminder is, if you don't want to become a Patreon, supporting the show is so easy. If you are a listener every week or you tune in really regularly, you can subscribe, share, and leave a 5-star review. Each month, I randomly pick a review that someone has left, and I give them a free 30-minute tarot reading with myself. This month's winner is, drum roll please, Lindsay Lee from the LBC. Lindsay, you left a review on November 18th, 2021, and you are the winner. Please contact the studio and we can set up a reading for you. See, it doesn't matter when you leave a review. All reviews are automatically entered. So feel free to update your review if you've already left one, or pause the show and leave one right now. I'll still be here when you get back. Isn't that wild? Okay, let's get into this week's topic. Today, we've got a tarot teaching episode. We are discussing all things 6 of Wands. So let's dive in. Of course, we're talking about the 6 of Wands because we're in a 6th year, and therefore in the 6th constellation, which includes the Lovers, the Devil, and the Sixes. Might be my fave constellation. Jury's out, but right now, 10 out of 10, no notes. For more on constellations, if you're listening and you're like, WTF is she talking about? Well, there's a workshop for that. I've got a workshop for that. It's in our shop, and it's all about this. It's the Devil, the Lovers, and the Sixes. So the link is you know where, and I'm sure that Google is your friend. Okay. So because we're in a 6th year and we've already done episodes about the Lovers, the shadow of the Lovers, and the Devil, and for you patrons, you have shadow of the Devil, we are now moving on. We're moving on to the minor arcana. And again, if you want to listen to those prior episodes, if you're just joining us, hello, just scroll through the pod and you'll find them and listen to them, and you will have your tarot expertise widen and deepen that much more. Before we get into the details of the Six of Wands, let's zoom out a bit. I shall be waxing poetic for a little bit about the minor arcana because the minor arcana, it's kind of my fave. It's no one's surprise. I love the minors so much, I created a whole course around them because I have found discussion about the minors to be a little bit lacking, to be honest. I love the minors because, for one, it's grounding these larger spiritual and archetypal energies into reality. The minors are often a bite-sized lesson that is easier for us to digest or easier for us humans to wrap our arms around and apply in our lives. And you all know I am a practical witch, if anything else, and I appreciate that about the minors. The minors can also show you the actual factual scenarios that will pop up for you or that will be popping up for you in order to make good on that spiritual learning. If the majors are this huge sweeping energy and initiation experience and really healing event, I know I sound dramatic, but the majors can sometimes feel outside of language in a way. The minors give us clues as to how this larger energy could show up, or gives us insight into the different ways in which we alchemize and embody these larger learnings, these larger bits of wisdom. They give us easy to interpret clues. I usually think that the minors are much easier to interpret than the majors, in my humble opinion. And they give us mirrors to where we must look, what we must attune to, what you need to put your attention to in order to change, grow, learn, figure out what your curriculum is. They're so practical. They can also help us connect dots that we might not be able to connect on our own, or, you know, maybe we can only connect them in a therapy session or with a real heart-to-heart with a good friend. They help us connect dots because they show us where certain connections, certain patterns are showing up that we might not be conscious of. So that's another aspect of them that I really love. I also really love them because they highlight and underscore this strong connection between the tarot and play. They are originally connected to a deck of playing cards, right? Wands is clubs in a playing card deck. Cups is hearts. Diamonds is pentacles, and so on. And I love the highlight of the magic of the everyday here, which in my opinion is a lot of magic. It's folk magic especially. We find magic in the mundane. It's not only in some ashram, although of course it's there too, but it's when we are taking a walk or when we are taking out the trash that we encounter magic. I also am really into this link between play, imagination, and intuition. Our intuition is strong when we are playing and or when we are utilizing our imagination. We don't grow or thrive or connect to our inner voice in circumstances of punishment or control. Could you imagine if you were like yelling at your intuition, if you're like, just be intuitive? Like your intuition's like, this doesn't seem fun. I'm maybe going to fly away and I'll come back when you're a little more chill. And this, of course, is why so many wish to control us. They want to tamp down our imagination and intuition. That's one of many reasons. The last little reminder, is this the last? We don't know. It's me. There could be one more or two. The last is this reminder of these different threads in tarot history. One is that tarot grew in popularity in Italy with working class folks through gambling. And at that time, gambling was a way to make money outside of the power of the church, which controlled everyone's finances. The powers that be did not want you to make money in ways that they could not trace. Therefore, they were not taxable. They could not take some of your money. They could not know what was going on. And gambling, after hours in alleyways, on the margins, was one way to circumvent that control. The other historical piece I wanted to highlight is the importance of the Romani and their contribution to tarot as a tool of divination. With the introduction of these cards, which once the printing press came onto the scene, which again is this reminder that one, magic is often created by those in the margins, and two, everyone can practice magic and divination in their life in their own ways through their own backgrounds. And yes, you can use tarot to do so, or even playing cards, but you don't need anything. What you need is clear intuition, whether it is bones, runes, astrology, tarot, so on and so forth. All of these are tools. They aren't the authority. They are the medium, but you are the message. Or are they the message and you're the medium? And yes, I am thinking of that Marshall McLuhan pun for all of you wondering. The other thing I feel called to share while I'm here is that it is because of the Romani that we have in like the Golden Dawn decks and some much older decks, this correlation between Egypt and the tarot. Racist, ignorant people in Britain thought that the Romani people came from Egypt and shortened their name, which is a slur, which is the G word. So there's that very odd, I don't even know what to call it. I'm sure there's a name for it. It's just when there's this weird leap that's being made. I know that a lot of members of the Golden Dawn also highlighted or underscored that tarot was given to Egyptian pharaohs. Listen, it was, I don't know what they were smoking. Maybe it was opium. Maybe they were drinking absinthe. I'm not sure. They were not simply just drinking a happy refresher, such as myself. But anyway, I wanted to kind of share that with you because we know that we have to be clear about some of these odd, new age, appropriative, incorrect associations that weave through certain spiritual tools. And I just felt called to share that. And there is a lot more information out there about that. And for you listening, never use the G word. It's a slur. It's not okay. Don't support people who use it, who are not Romani. Like I see a lot of brands or a lot of people's handles on the internet. It's just not okay. All right. Last but not least, the last reason for today, before we really get into it, of why I love the minors, why they are important to me personally as a witch. And this is because of the elemental connection. The minors are the elements, my friends. They are the building blocks of magic because they are the building blocks of life on Earth. Basically, every cosmology, every spiritual cosmology includes the elements and often the directions because these are the things that make us up. They contextualize us, they connect us, and they underscore our various relationships. Magic is relational, and the elements are proof of that. And so once you understand that each minor arcana and court card, and court cards, if that's the system you use, it's the system I use. Once you understand that these are facets of the elements, qualities of each element, it makes interpretation and application so much easier. And of course, we know the wands are fire. So let's start there. What are the qualities of fire? Well, fire needs to be fed, for one. Fire needs fuel. Fire is energy. So immediately we can think of what feeds us energetically. Other qualities of fire. Fire rises. Heat rises. So fire always wants to go higher. Remember that song? I want to go higher. That's what fire wants. Fire wants to alchemize. Fire wants to go somewhere else, learn something different. Fire is an illuminator. Fires are like little suns, lighting our way in the dark. So there's sight, this aspect of sight, which is associated with fire. And sight, at least in the Kabbalah, is synonymous with perception and quality and complexity and understanding. Remember that in Kabbalistic terms, in Jewish mysticism, light means sight or seeing or perception. It is not synonymous with light like love and light. It is synonymous with quality of sight, with the truth. And the truth is often painful, complex, confronting, right? We also know the importance of fire in human brain's development. Fire cooks food. Fire can create new forms. thinking of the Iron Age. I'm thinking of the myth of Prometheus, that fire's stolen from the gods. I'm also thinking of fire as a connector, like people gathering around a campfire to tell stories. There's this implication also with fire and it being stolen from the gods, of fire being godlike, really magical, spiritual in nature. Fire is both warming and protective. We know that really early on, we used fire for both heat and safety. These are just some of my off-the-cuff thoughts on fire. So think about how you would define qualities of fire to help you deepen into more understanding and interpretations of the suit of wands. Let's do maybe some other aspects here. We know that when fire is left unchecked, it spreads and destroys. It's like creation and destruction, because we know that once land is cleared by fire, new growth occurs. Fire is indiscriminate in its spreading. Also, fire needs particular fuel to spread its growth, right? So fire can often be dependent, at least in the beginning stages of fire. And also fire is associated with fast growth, which also we can extend that to wands. Often traditionally, when you get a wand or wands in a reading, it is an indicator that things are available to be moving quickly, or things are moving quickly. And if you're impatient, such as myself, that's a good sign. And if you're overwhelmed, such as myself, that can also be like not the best news, right? And then when we think of the other elements, we'll take a little loop around. We know that air helps fire. We know that fire needs air. And we know that fire needs earth. So those are like the support systems of fire, as it were, elementally. And we know that water and fire, they're not the best of friends. Water puts fire out, but water and fire make steam, right? So I like a sauna, so, it can be good too. So you can start to think about how the elements interact with one another, particularly when you're doing a spread. And this can really help us, because when we're pulling cards for a spread, it's about how the different cards are talking to one another, how they're dialoguing with one another, how they're getting along, and maybe where there's contrast. It's all really great information for us as we look to interpreting our spreads. Traditionally, wands are associated with action taking, with growth, especially growth through challenges. What's feeding the fire, right? They are associated with energy, passion, sex, sexuality, instinct, identity, what we do to get what we are passionate about, or motivating forces, what we do to grow, to move forward. I think of wands or fire as more externally focused than internally focused. This would be a case of changing your surroundings first, or taking different actions first and then getting insight. I also think of the suit as being really relational. In a lot of the traditional illustrations, the wands is where a lot of other people pop up. Also, traditionally, the wands are about spirituality, but low-key, I think all the suits are, it's what facet of spirituality is available to us through the wands. And I think about the wands as being the tools we use to help us interface with spirituality, the actions we take in order to be in alignment with our spirituality or our beliefs. And on the subject of tools, like modalities or the things we use, I think about wands. We hold a wand to help us focus, to direct energy. If we're weaponizing those tools, can come up here. And also like thinking about, are the tools using us? Are we using the tools? What's going on there? So I think about ceremonial magic. I also think about smoke and mirrors as it comes up in spirituality, like cults and cults of personalities, charismatic leaders. I also think, on like a good note, I also think about how we can perceive those smoke and mirrors, or how we can see through those smoke and mirrors to connect to an empowered version of our own inner authority. It also always reminds me, this suit, that our spiritual practice is our life. It isn't only happening on the mat or only on the meditation cushion. It's literally how we live out our beliefs, which is what I love about the wands, right? It's that, what's that saying? Actions speak louder than words. Thank you very much. That's what I think about when we are in wands territory. On the subject also of like beliefs, I think of weaponizing beliefs. I think of the dark sides of spirituality and religion, control. I think about manifest destiny, about these really violent tools that people have used to spread over the planet. And I guess that's what brings us into the wands shadow, which I'm sure all of you know, or all of you can figure out. We've got pride. Pride can be useful until it turns into defensiveness or contempt. We've got ego. Ego's not bad either. Ego's super needed. Love the ego until it gets confused. So there's insecurity disguised as power over, or dominance, or violence. There can be wanting more just for the sake of wanting more, or wanting more without knowing why, or enjoying what you have. There can be this inability to be satiated. And of course, we have the correlation between wands and burnout and overwhelm. And this is complicated because sometimes burnout is simply a misuse of energy. We're not using our energy in the right way. We're using too much of our energy. We aren't recharging. We aren't refueling. But now, as we've seen in these times, and as I've spoken about before here, burnout is a byproduct of capitalism being expected to go on in impossible situations. We're seeing this. So what I do want to say, I've said this before, if you are burned out, it's not your fault. What is being expected of us is impossible. So at the very least, don't blame yourself. It's not your fault. We do have to take accountability. We do have to rest more. We do need to recalibrate. We need to figure out different things in our lives to help us. And I also acknowledge that that's easier said than done. Okay. There's the emphasis on action in the wands, because when we pull a wands card, we're thinking about what we can do. You can ask yourself, what do I need to do? Last but not least, we also have this theme of consciousness, levels and layers of consciousness. And like I said before, often we do not get a strong answer until we do the thing, or until we do things differently. When we take action, at the very least, we learn what we don't want or what didn't work. We learn more about who we are. And we know that we learn through action taking. So wands is where a lot of lessons take place through doing, through trying new things, through seeing new sights, through exploring. This is the suit of risk taking, of being bold, of experimentation. It's very main character energy. This is also about how we're using our energy and where we get our energy from. Our energy is our most precious resource, which is also why I think the wands might come first in the order of the minor arcana. Some mystics or magicians also would probably say it's because of the Big Bang. We know that the universe started with an explosion. There's this element here of the spark. If we don't have a spark, at least once in a while, life gets real hard, real quick. If we don't have a vision, a direction, something we are after, life tends to lose meaning a bit. All of this lives in the realm of wands. And all of this already tells us a lot about the Six of Wands, right? The first step we always want to do with tarot interpretations is use our own intuition. What does your intuition say about this card when you pull it out and look at it? What's going on with the other cards you've pulled for the spread? What was your question? The next step we might want to do when thinking about tarot card interpretations is thinking about the number. Sequences are important, especially when we're learning the tarot. 6 connotes a turning of the page, a recalibration, a folding over. It's the first perfect number. There's a flow and abundance to 6. We can think about numbers in the tarot really like 3, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 in the minors are in general numbers that connote abundance, expansion in the minors. 6s are about integration and recalibration. We also know that because of the Lovers card is number 6 as well. It's both and. It's half glass open and full. If we're thinking about the moon, I sometimes think about the full moon as hanging out in like the 4s, maybe all the way to the 7s. Maybe if we're really lucky, it's an 8. I also have a whole theory about the court cards and the moon phases that I'll save for another day. Anywho, 6. When you get a 6, it's time for a different chapter. You know that it's time to move on. It's time to change a pattern somehow, to flow. It's not starting over, though. That's more the energy of the ace, the two. This is about rearranging some dynamic or some behavior or something that's already there in order to flow in different ways. This is permission granting energy. This is movement energy. This is energy that's going to respond to you so long as you do something different, take action in a different way. That is the beauty of sixes. It's call and response. It's a dialogue. It's an exchange. And it often requires something different from you. In some cases, the ask is to move or take a break or go away or go somewhere else, for sure. And also, it can be about approaching the same thing, whether that be a goal or a relationship or a habit or a pattern. It's about addressing it in a different way. And we see this in the Six of Wands. The next step we want to try, if we are learning tarot, is looking to the cards before and after it. When we get a card, or when we're trying to learn more about a card, we can think about the lesson we are being called to learn in the previous card. And the Five of Wands is about the inability to see the forest for the trees. We see conflict often. We see being in process. Sometimes it is generative. Sometimes it is not. I did a whole episode on the Five of Wands. Not going to go too deep there. You can check that out. It aired originally in December of 2021. So if in the Five of Wands, we have this illustration of perhaps being trapped or in conflict, in the weeds, in it, the Six of Wands illustrates movement. There can sometimes be frustration and indecision in the Five of Wands. Our energy sometimes can be tangled up. Our energy could feel like it's not our own, / it's in the process of being recalibrated, often through frustration, often in an acute, fiery kind of way. And in the Six of Wands, we see what could happen if we make a decision. If we decide to choose a better or different way to use and utilize our energy. If in the Five of Wands we're perhaps losing ourselves or contorting our identity or confused about who we are now, who we want to be, what our practice is, what our creativity consists of. I think I forgot. Wands is often about creativity, how we express our spirit. In the Six of Wands, we decide. We pick one, or we pick a methodology, or we pick a practice to roll with. The Six of Wands reminds us that we belong to ourselves, and when we choose an authentic self, that's when we are seen, noticed, admired. A cheat code to the Six of Wands is to think about who or what you would like to notice you. Why? What qualities do these people have? Or these deities have? Or these planets have? Or these trees? Or these flowers? Or these animals? Or these muses have? Okay. How then do you bring these qualities out in yourself? Remember, the constellation umbrella, the constellation center, is the lovers. What you seek in another is also seeking you. What you want from another, you have to be in practice with giving to yourself. It's this call and response. It's this reciprocity. It's this exchange. It's this idea of equilibrium. Another cheat code to the Six of Wands is about perception, of course. In the Five of Wands, there's a yearning to be perceived, but maybe you aren't going about it in the right way. Or perhaps you're knocking on some doors that aren't going to open to you. In the Six, we have this key. You perceive as you are perceived. You are perceived as you perceive. That's it. That's all you really have control over. And so maybe it's time to choose a quality of perception, a vehicle of perception that feels authentic and resonant to you. I often say that the Five of Wands is a card about belonging, about wanting to belong, needing to belong, and what we do to try to belong. You know, it can be either in a group of people, like where's my people, where's my home, or it could be like who are my colleagues, or what is my industry, or what is my artistic style, or what is my spiritual modality that I'm really going to blossom under. There's this yearning around belonging in the Five of Wands. And the Six of Wands reminds us that true belonging comes from belonging to ourselves first. The acceptance we bring to ourselves helps us to stop relying solely on other people for validation or permission. You know, I know we are interdependent. I know that, believe me. And also, if all we do is outsource our energy, if all we do is outsource our validation to other people, we're just going to be doggy paddling in a storm, in a whirlpool, you know? It can be a fool's errand. So when you get the Six of Wands, you can ask yourself, okay, what would make me proud of myself? What do I need to do to get there? It's for this reason that I see the wands as illustrating the power of decision magic. Some of us, myself included, forget that every day we're making decisions. We decide what to eat, how to spend our time, how to show up. If we aren't making a conscious decision, someone or something else is making it for us. If we aren't making a conscious decision, our subconscious is making it for us. Our fears are making it for us. Our automatic patterns are making it for us. And that's also linked to energy, yeah? Because our brains, our subconscious, they're just helping us conserve our energy. That's one of the functions of the brain. And how the brain helps us conserve our energy is by going along the same neural pathways, doing the same automatic things using our bodies and emotions and habits and motor skills in the same way. Doesn't matter if it's good for us, healthy for us, calming for us, nourishing for us, or harming us, distracting us, effing us up. I know. It's so rude. It's so rude, but it's true. So the Six of Wands can be about this real triumphant moment of deciding to learn something new, trying something different, breaking out of a habit, breaking out of the crowd, or breaking out of some set of expectations you've been holding for yourself that maybe held you back. It's so hard. I say this as someone who I'm trying to use my non-dominant hand as much as possible. It's hard. It's worthwhile, of course. A lot of traditional meanings of the Six of Wands is victory or success. And it definitely tracks when someone pulls this card. It could mean that you are about to receive some kind of victory or success, or you're in the process of priming yourself for a particular success. What if you decided you were going to be successful no matter what? What if you really defined success for yourself first? Maybe it includes other people. Maybe it includes validation. Perhaps it starts with proving something to yourself. There's a real moment of healing when you realize fundamentally you don't have to prove anything to anyone else. There's a real exhale that occurs when you find yourself in that space, which I believe this archetype speaks to. You only have to prove things to you. That begins with movement, begins with energetic refinement. The only way out is through. Decision magic is so powerful, but it does require fuel. So you have to think about what fuel you're putting in your tank. One part of this fuel is vision, which we also see illustrated in the Pamela Coleman Smith version of this card. This leads me to this concept of sight and consciousness. The figure is on a horse. They can see far away. Horses, we know, are symbols of movement, of vehicles, of travel, of different vantage points, of collaboration. The person seems to know where they are going, or at the very least, we know they can see a few steps ahead. The Five of Wands, we're so in it, it's hard to change our consciousness. When you're in a challenging situation, a crappy job, a bad living situation, it can become overpowering. It can be really overwhelming. It can be hard to see solutions, hard to see how this is going to end. We can begin to feel trapped. Our vision can get really narrow. I've been there so many times. The Six of Wands is asking us to look up, is wanting us to see another way, is wanting us to conserve our energy so we can try other things or play with our energy in different ways. This card wants us to be successful, wants us to move forward into the next thing. You can ask yourself, what different actions can I take? Who do I have to be? Sometimes it is just leaving a bad situation. Sometimes it just is having boundaries with your energy or your emotions around the situation. So think about that when you get this card. I think of that meme from Euphoria. It's actually from the show Euphoria, where Maddie, we love Maddie, where she says something about confidence. She says 90% of life is confidence. And the thing about confidence is that no one knows if it's real or not. That is true. That is a true statement. I hear no lies, and we know that confidence starts with ourselves first. When you get the Six of Wands, it could be a gentle nudge that you've been underselling yourself, that it's time to gather some confidence, that you have everything you need already, which is why this card can sometimes also be about imposter syndrome or about waiting for someone else to come along and validate you. That can sometimes be the shadow of the Six of Wands. The Six of Wands in a supportive role wants us to take the lead, put our hands on the wheel, use our energy more effectively, and rearrange certain relational dynamics. That could be with ourselves. Maybe we've been exploiting ourselves. Maybe we've been overworking. A lot of highly sensitives do that. I've been talking a lot about that in my boundaries class, so it's on my mind for sure. It's an annoying adage. I know. It's true, though. They spread because they're true. We teach others how to treat us. And for those who refuse to treat us with respect, we have to make a choice about how much access these people get to have to us. Another nickname I have for the Six of Wands is the up-level card or the promotion card. But in order to up-level or to get a promotion, sometimes you've got to give it to yourself first. Sometimes you've got to do that self-promotion. I've been thinking about this so much personally about how I am spending my precious and finite energy. And it all starts with myself. Another aspect of this card can be about recalibrating one's spiritual practice. Is it time to think about what your spiritual practice is for? Is it time to explore different methods of magic? Is it time to invest in research or reading more esoteric texts on trying a different kind of spell or ritual? Or do you have to go back to the basics? In my opinion, the most effective magic is practical magic. So do what works. And while we're on the subject of magic and the Six of Wands, this card of rising fire and a vision of new horizons and different ways of connecting to the divine. I think of this quote from Hildegard von Bingen, the Benedictine mystic saint, incredible artist, incredible visionary. I believe created also like new forms of music. Friends, you can write in and let me know. I think they created some kind of new scale, or I can't remember. A musician friend of mine told me. Anyway, total polymath, total genius. I love this quote from them. In this vision, my soul, as God would have it, rises up high into the vault of heaven and into the changing sky and spreads itself out. The light which I see is far, far brighter than a cloud which carries the sun. I can measure neither height nor length nor breadth in it, and I call it the reflection of the living light. And as the sun, the moon, and the stars appear in water, so writings, sermons, virtues, and certain human actions take form for me and gleam. if sixes are about exchange and reciprocity and recalibration and integration, and your spiritual practice isn't hitting the same notes as it once was, can you find it elsewhere? Is it time to open yourself up to receiving more messages? If you've been forcing something energetically or spiritually, is it time to surrender? Is it time to open up? Is it time to ask for help, to pray? Is it time to try to do things differently, at a different frequency? If you've been expecting something from your spiritual practice, is it time to drop the expectations? If you've been casting spells for a specific outcome and they haven't been working, maybe it's time to get simpler. Maybe it's time to invest in your relationships with certain muses, deities, helpers, herbs, flower friends, elements, fire, the land. I could be here all day, you know I could. So just think about that. I think these are all really resonant questions to be asking ourselves this year. And the Six of Wands presents us with more options. All sixes do. Another thing I wanted to say with this card in relation to the Five of Wands, and I've said it like 17 times in this podcast, but I really think this is important, is to run your energy differently. Switch up your energetic patterns. In the Five of Wands, we see the downfalls of matching energy. What I'm talking about here is something that highly sensitives often do. Folks who also have trauma, folks who are survivors, folks who really needed to be hypervigilant, particularly during foundational years of their life. For their survival, a learned skill was to read the energy all around them first before tapping into one's own energy or putting up an energetic shield or bubble. I mean, unless you're like a witch or, you know, grew up in Northern California or something. I don't know that you had parents that were teaching you when you were a 2-year-old, hey, here's how you run your energy. Here is how you ground. Here is how you call back your energy. So, you know, I mean, maybe you're listening and you did and you didn't like it, but I've also heard that from people, but I certainly didn't. And I really wish I had learned this skill set. So we have been taught subconsciously or through habits or through patterns to match other people's energy or to make up for other people's energy. So if someone's energy is really loud, really aggressive, really dysregulated, we became maybe really small, really calm, really quiet. Maybe we got into freeze state, or maybe we really tried to ground and harmonize the entire space or the entire dynamic. Maybe we learned to people please, to say, sure, whatever you want, to give some of our energy away. This is all subconscious, by the way. It's no one's fault. This is a very common dynamic and it's a survival mechanism. So we have to be really thankful to our past selves for being smart enough to be able to have learned that and to have done that. But now it's time to call back your energy and not match energy. The other very refined message of the Six of Wands about moving out of the Five of Wands into the Six of Wands and not matching energy is, quite frankly, my dears, if one person in a room is flipping out, it's maybe not the best strategy to match their level of flipping out, but we do that all the time. That's why I'm really careful about what media I consume. That's why I'm incredibly skeptical of media that is fear-mongering, that is trying to hijack our nervous systems, trying to get a kind of hysterical response out of us, And I'm also, again, discerning. I'm careful about being around people who get into these huge extremes. You can't solve a problem in the energy it was created in. Like if someone steps to me and is yelling at me yelling back at them, which is an example of matching energy, that isn't helping either one of us. Feel your feelings, for sure. I'm not saying don't feel your feelings. I'm not saying don't express your feelings. I'm not saying don't feel grief or sorrow. Don't call a friend and vent. That's not what I'm saying. I hope you can understand the nuance of what I'm talking about. So in the Six of Wands, we see this recalibration. We see this refinement of our energy and thinking about how we can put that into practice in our lives, practically, in certain relationships, with certain dynamics, with certain patterns we have. Sometimes it's so subtle. I'm going to share one more thing. It's just popped into my head about the subtlety of it. I think I've shared before, maybe I haven't. My students know that boxing has been really helpful for me to really get a completely different read on my energy and how I run my energy. And I had this aha moment. I had this moment where I was running my energy to match energy, but also to be on the defense. And in order to stay in my core energy, I needed to be on the offense. I needed to move forward with sparring, not just waiting for my sparring partner to come towards me and then react. And I spoke about it with my trainer. And what I realized was that, as a woman, as a femme, as someone who's 5'2" and really little, and a survivor, by the way, of content warning, of all kinds of abuse, physical, sexual, emotional, many different kinds of abuse, my nervous system wasn't wired to stay in ventral vagal or to just be on the offense. And I told my trainer, who's a man, who's a cis straight dude, I said to him, society doesn't generally train women to advance when someone is coming towards them to punch them, right? And so I had to really do a lot of somatic processing and resetting and a lot of nervous system processing and resetting, because I would find myself going into freeze. My brain would go offline. My amygdala would take over. Shout out to the Better Boundaries participants who know exactly what I'm talking about. We covered all of this in class 2. And I wasn't able to react in my embodied presence. And that's just a really practical example of the Six of Wands in action. It can sometimes be in a really small moment when you catch yourself reacting from a trained habit pattern in your soma, in your nervous system, because you learned that that was how you survived, right? So look for those little moments where you catch yourself flipping over. That's very Six of Wands, and see where you can move that energy. There's that whole form of therapy called Gestalt, which posits that anxiety is just excitement with breath. I don't love it. I don't love these truisms that stay lodged in my frontal cortex, but it's useful to think about that energy. I always tell my students too in moonbeaming, follow your energy, complete the stress cycle. If you're mad, punch a pillow, kick something, yell, pound the floor, put on death metal and rage it out for 20 minutes. Write a letter you're not going to send and burn it. This is all very important Six of Wands work. And I hope that I went off-road again. Hello. But I hope that's helpful to folks who are like, yeah, but how does this work IRL? This is the year we're creating new definitions of success, where we're taking our energy back, taking our power back, creating clear mirrors, becoming a mirror to ourselves. The Six of Wands gives us this opportunity to see what can happen, what opportunities, what glimmers can come to assist us, to help us start different ways of acting, being, creating, different ways of encountering the self. And also it illustrates the relief that comes when we decide to move forward or go in another direction. In order to receive different things, you have to show up differently. You have to emerge in different ways. You have to maybe change your identity, become a different person, become your best friend, become your bravest self, become your sweetest self. It's time to try leading with different parts of yourselves. It's time to explore other levels of consciousness and perception. Zoom out. It's available to you now. I hope this all helps, my friends. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for receiving. Thank you for putting up with my very corny jokes and my beverage shout outs and my off-roads. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a beautiful day. Moon Beaming is brought to you by the Moon Studio. It is created and hosted by me, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener. It is edited by Rose Blakelock with a lot of additional help from Hazel Frew. It is supported by our beautiful patrons, which you can join over at patreon.com, The Moon Studio. If you would like to further support the podcast, you can sign up for a sponsorship. You can rate and review it or share it with your friends or on your social media. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you so much.